What's up, everyone? My name is Chris Fanzon. You are listening to the Hidden Doors podcast, and the podcast upcoming is my conversation with Sifu Rob Atalick. He's an author of the book called Be Like T. He's been a martial artist his whole life. He's been teaching holistic kung fu for 15 years. He owns and operates the Niagara Kung Fu Academy in Niagara Falls, Canada. He specialized in teaching martial arts in a holistic way that empowers practitioners to become the best version of themselves. And he cultivates a lifestyle of health and success. His latest project is the construction of the Serenity Temple in Niagara Falls, a retreat center of a 50-acre conservation for the purpose of holistic self-cultivation. This guy's an awesome dude. He talks to me about the book. He talks to me about some of the discipline and the academy that he has and the principles that he institutes and teaches. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. If you do, please give me a thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date on more videos like this, more videos and more podcasts like this. I hope you enjoy. All right. Kung Fu Master, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic today. How about you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for coming on here.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it too.
Yeah. So, that's a joke with the Kung Fu Master, but it's not really. You do Kung Fu. You teach Kung Fu, right?
Yeah. I am actually a certified, there is a certification for master. So.
Like, you actually could certify, and you could certifiably beat the crap out of me, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, they don't certify you for that, but technically, there's other stuff that has to go with it. But yeah, when you're running a school, you're teaching, and you've tested to a certain level, they don't actually make you beat the crap out of anyone. But there is a boxes you got to check though.
Yeah, that's interesting. When did you start doing? This?
Oh, most of my life, and I usually don't let my students know how old I am. I kind of keep that secret, but it's been, I've been teaching professionally for 20 years.
Teaching professionally for 20 years.
Yeah.
And before that, you must have been doing it earlier than that.
Yeah,
so when did you start doing like Kung Fu?
Yeah, so probably about 30 years ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
And other martial arts too, but there's different styles of Kung Fu. So I was researching other styles and learning other styles before I got into the main style that I'm currently teaching, that I hold that master certificate in, and that's specifically that's Praying Mantis Kung Fu. If anyone's ever heard of that.
It's called Praying Mantis.
Yeah, so the style of Kung Fu is based off the actual insect, and it's like in the Kung Fu Panda movies with the hooks, like those motions are in the system as well.
Got it. I'm just thinking of like the Karate Kid when he does like the 1 foot like kick at the end. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so that kind of like comes from crane style kung fu. So all these styles of kung fu are based. Most of them are based off different animals, right? And they have different animal characteristics in them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How did you turn this into self-development? Because everyone I talk to, no one, there's exercise, there's eating right. Those are all good things, but you're unique in the fact that you've bridged this Kung Fu. Is martial arts like the overarching thing, and Kung Fu is one of the things in martial arts? So like bridging martial arts to self-development makes a lot of sense to me. I'm assuming you'd have to be very disciplined. I'm assuming you have to be able to understand you're probably going to get your butt kicked every once in a while, and you need to keep up and be motivated. It seems to make sense, but you're like one of the first people I've talked to who actually are bridging this gap. So how did you do that?
I guess it's in the lifestyle. I think because a lot of people do martial arts kind of as a hobby, and because I made it a lifestyle, not only, for my health, but also my business. That's my life. And it just was always that way. I guess I credit good teachers too. I always had very good teachers who were, teaching me the techniques, but also the philosophy. And once you understand the philosophy, you're applying it in your business and in your health and in your relationships. So I always, for me, just thought like there's a lot of value here for people, because you can learn to punch and kick, and that's really fun, and you learn the self-defense. But what really makes this stuff valuable is when you start, shaping your life through your through your mentality, through your attitude, and how you handle confrontation. I mean, the confrontation we're going to deal with in life, you know, at tops 1% of it is physical. 99% is confrontation we deal with others emotionally, in how we communicate, in our different point of views, and all that stuff. So there's a whole lot to talk about in holistic kung fu, and the fighting part is, there's so little. I don't know, but it always seemed kind of obvious for me, but maybe that's having a perspective of it needed to be my whole life, because that was the business that I decided to go forward in.
Yeah, I'm reading a book called "Can't Hurt Me." It's on Amazon top charts. It's by David Goggins. David Goggins is a nut job. He's like a Navy SEAL. He like he runs like these ultra marathons for like 100 miles plus in like 24 hours, and he's the like I'm not finished with the book yet, but the main theme is like he has. I think this is true. I'll take his word for it. He used to run on like broken like shins. I think they were fractured shins. I don't recommend anyone doing this, but the whole point was that like he was able to, and he at the time he wanted to quit, and every time he was in one of these bigger struggles, his thing was that it was always over a mental thing. It was more mental than physical. Getting through that pain, that is running on like a broken like toe, and just like in Hell Week and Navy SEALs, he would always be doing stuff with broken legs. I was like, what is this guy doing to himself? But the point was that it was always a lot more mental than physical. And I'm assuming that's a similar thing with Kung Fu, is like a big portion of it is mastering your mental fears or your self-control. What are the philosophies of Kung Fu that like are the mental side of that?
Well, the kung fu, I mean, the philosophy starts with, it's the concept that you're always improving a little bit in every way. Like kung fu is the skill that you acquire after time and sacrifice, right? So it's like when you think about conditioning. So we can condition our fists for punching and striking and stuff like that, right? Now, the wise old masters that condition, they don't go out like in the movies you see, like Van Damme in Kickboxer, when he goes out and he kicks a tree a whole bunch of times, right? Like that's not the way it's actually done. We call that like a hard style conditioning, where you're smashing your shins or bones, and it's very dramatic. And instead, what you do when you think long term is we do more of a softer style of conditioning, which is you're not hitting something hard, but you're just tapping light, but repeatedly, again and again and again, with that conditioning for years, right? Through thousands of repetitions. What happens is that conditioning is now deep in the bone, and it's concealed. You can't see it, but the knuckles are rock solid. They're not giant callous things. It's deep under the skin. That's kind of the concept. Or if you do something for a long period of time, your body's going to adapt, and you're going to have an ability to do things that other people can't really even grasp, let alone do, because it's through just so much work, right? So that's a part of it too. But also, yeah, it's overcoming those struggles, because once you overcome the struggles, no matter what it is, whether it's like you said, like stuff that they're doing at Hell Week, once you've done that mentally, that transitions in everything. Like, look at, I'm not sure, I haven't read that book yet, but when you talk about Jocko and how he's like
Yeah.
coaching like companies at, like, I don't know what level he's doing team leadership and stuff like that. Like, that's easy for him. Like, I mean, it's not easy, but it's like, okay, there's a new challenge where once you've gone through hell in one way, everything else, whether you're doing coaching, marketing, sales, or whatever, it's like, all right, I'll get through that, right? Yeah.
I could imagine it being easy for Jocko's used to being under fire, like literal fire. I'm sure he goes into these corporations and looks at people like me and say, "You guys are weak.
Exactly.
You are weak."
Exactly. Yeah, but it's all, once you've crossed those mental barriers, everything else physical is just, that's the icing on the cake, right?
so so there's two things to this, right? It's like you talk about when you're punching something, you're little by little adding the discipline to get your fist harder. This way you can punch through a cinder block, right? Is is there one more than the other? There's a mental aspect of saying I'm not punching a cinder block because I'm going to break my damn hand. The other side of it is you're actually doing all those repetitions in the past. If you've made your bone stronger, is it one more than the other, or is it really both? Like first you're doing the mental side, but you even if you let's say you're a psychopath and you're like, you know what, I don't care, I'm going to punch a cinder block and I've never tried it before. is it really the fact that you're building the bone density to break it? Or if let's say I'm the guy that just punches it as hard as I can, I've never practiced it before, will I break my hand?
Well, yeah, you got you got you definitely gotta have both, right? You gotta have that commitment. Because even someone like when we do board breaking, and I know there's a lot of people in the martial arts community think the board breaking is kind of funny sometimes because boards don't hit back, right? But there is a really cool methodology and a metaphor behind that because I've seen people that you look at them and they're physically bigger and stronger, and they can get stumped by the same material that they're trying to break by someone half their size because they'll get stuck on that obstacle. They'll see the board or brick or whatever, they're focused on it, that's in their way, and they don't follow through because at the last minute they're a little bit hesitant. They don't want to give full commitment because what if they can't do it, right? And that's the metaphor. Whereas someone who achieves what they want, they're not stopping at that obstacle, they're going through it. And that's kind of the magic in that board breaking and brick breaking is the mental exercise of it. It's not like, look, now I had a break, so now yeah, I broke a board, broke a brick, so now I can beat someone up. Like, no one cares about that. And again, they don't hit back. It's about the mental exercise that can you commit through that. Once you visualize the outcome and you've done the work of conditioning the body, can you follow through with it, right? And that's with everything else. Like when you're trying to achieve any goal, you have to visualize that outcome. You've got to prepare yourself, physically and what tools you need, but then you've got to commit. And if you're hesitating at the last second, you're not going to achieve that, right?
That all makes sense to me. So how do you? So do you have like a? I feel like the name of it is. Do you have a dojo? Is
We
that
just
how
we call it an academy. Yeah, so dojo is like a
an
like
academy?
Japanese word. Yeah, so we call it an
Got
academy.
it.
Yeah, so
So you have an academy.
Niagara Kung Fu
Got it.
Academy in Niagara Falls, Canada side. That's where I teach.
Got it. So you're from Canada.
Yep, yep.
Got it. Okay. So what? How does that work? Like, you have, let's say, adults or kids that come into the academy, and you're teaching them kung fu, but are they also expecting to be learning another like it seems like they're coming in to learn kung fu, but then they get like taught even more than what they were asking for. They get like taught these amazing life lessons of self-improvement, to be better, to fight through challenges. How do you weave that into the kung fu, or is it like already naturally woven in?
No, it's different for everyone. Kung Fu is a trap. We say that Kung Fu is a trap, and that everyone comes in for different reasons. Some people come in because of the breathing, or they find that breaking stuff really cool, or they like the self defense, or they want to use nunchucks, or because they saw Ip Man, punch a whole bunch of people. Everyone's different, and it ends up being a trap because you're attracted to the art for different reasons because you want to learn discipline or empower yourself, but ultimately you end up staying because of the self development. So people, and this is centuries old. Like masters would have students in because they wanted to learn how to protect themselves, right, or fight or get revenge, like in a lot of the movies, and on that way they end up cultivating a higher version of themselves. All right. So it's not easy, but we always start the student explaining this is what, we're going to get in shape, we're going to lose weight, we're going to learn self defense and focus. And then along the way, we're going to teach you what this is ultimately all about, and that you're bringing out a higher version of yourself that was always there. We just needed to chip away the pieces.
What if you see someone who's like there for the wrong reasons, who just wants to learn to beat the crap out of
Well,
somebody? Is that easy to detect?
yeah, you can usually we do have a screening process at our school, so we've always had that because the style that we do, Mantis, is actually pretty not nice. Like it's a self defense style, so you are training to hurt people in a lot of mean ways. So we make sure that we
Yeah.
want to teach this to people that are not going to abuse that. But typically, when someone shows up for the wrong thing, and you say, "Look, long term, we're going to be working on building up your inner strength and improving your energy and vitality, but also teaching you better confidence and discipline," they're gonna be like, they'll get that it's not really for them, right? So that's part of any business, is having good marketing where you're really getting your message out of what you want, who you want to attract, but also making it very clear on who you're not a good fit for. And both of those got to be held kind of at the same time, right? So if our message out
Yeah.
there to the market is good, then we have to do less of that kind of weeding out that, yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking of just like the rare case where like they make movies about it, where like some kid comes in, thinks he's hot stuff, he's gonna learn all these things, and then he gets put down into reality, and you change him, and he comes out. It's almost like a I don't know. It's like a machine process of like input comes in, this person comes in, the output is like a completely different person. Maybe they're it's like, yeah, it's funny to watch that transformation. Probably it's like maybe people come in overly confident and then they get taken down to reality after they're in your gym and they're much more grounded. And maybe there's people who like are so afraid to take the first step and they come out and they're more confident. It must be interesting to see the transformation of like your students as they get into this stuff.
It's pretty awesome. So that's why we focus on, like, our goal is, so we have like a ranking system that we focus on, and what that's about is really teaching people how to set long-term goals, because we're not taught that in school as much as we should be, right?
I cover this so damn much. I'm like, why don't we teach this in school? Like, it's not even that difficult. It's just like writing down a goal, and your subconscious is now fighting for it. But for some reason, we don't want to tell kids to do that, even though I think it's like 50% of the reason why people accomplish
Yeah,
anything.
I have no idea, but that's a big part of what we do, is just that goal setting. Because if we can get a kid that's 8 years old to set a 3 year goal and then achieve it, he's got that skill set. Like when you talk about earning a belt in kung fu, like a black belt or a black sash, it's not about when you get this belt now you can kick the crap out of this person. Like that's, you're missing the point. If you get a 9 year old to set a 3 year goal and achieve it, that's 1/3 of his life. So that means when he's out of university, he's going to have no problem setting a goal for building something that's going to take 10 or 15 years, because he's got that mindset and he's learned how to do it. But if you don't learn how to do that, right? But the early age, that's why this stuff is so powerful for kids, because it gets that mindset and that goal setting in. They can apply it to everything once they've gone through it and they've seen, oh, this is really simple. This seemed hard. I broke it down into steps, and I kept on it, kept motivated, had good teachers, had good coaches, and there you go. I achieved it. You're right. It's a very simple process if we would just
Yeah.
teach it, right?
Have like teachers or like schools reached out to at all? Have you ever talked to anyone like saying, "Hey, why don't you guys apply this into like your curriculum or try it?"
We have kind of a, with teachers and our education system, we have a hit and miss. It's either completely love us or completely like don't, just don't get what we're doing. I wouldn't say hate's a strong word, but they don't like us particularly. So we do go into school sometimes, and we teach seminars and things like that, and once the teachers see it, they're like, this is awesome. But sometimes getting in there, again, they're pre-framed with something like, these people want to come in and teach our kids to punch and kick, and we don't want them, so it's hard to communicate what we're actually doing, right? That's the tricky part. But yeah, I think once they hear the message, then most teachers are completely on board.
Yeah, and I can't see why they wouldn't be. What got you into kung fu in the first place? Like, was there like a like I'm talking about the transformation of everyone. Like, were you like a not confident kid, overly confident? Like, what was your reason for getting
Yeah, I
into it?
was really, really small. I was always the smallest kid in my class. So always getting picked on, always getting shoved around, and not athletic, always, picked last. So I was never really good in any kind of sport. And then when I got into Kung Fu, I wasn't comparing myself to anyone, and all of a sudden it was like, well, you're really good at this. And I was like, well, I just because I put the time in. Wait a minute. And as a kid, this message is important. You're telling me if I just put time into something, focus on it a lot, do it repeatedly, I'll be really good at it. Like that, that was for a 9 or 10 year old kid. That it seems obvious to us, but it wasn't obvious at the time. So when I figured that out, I'm like, this is awesome. I can be whatever I want to be if I just put in the work and discipline. So that's kind of what drew me to it.
Do you have anything that you tell like your students to do when they're at home, like breathing exercises, or like eat healthy, or set goals for school? Like you were setting goals for getting a black belt, but like why don't you set a goal for like getting an A? Like how are you going to get there? Like do you branch it out more than like do you have them do things outside of the
Oh
academy?
yeah, yeah. For our kids, they have to too. So our kids, when they get their belt, the parents love this because they get stripes on their belt, right? Colored stripes. But they do it for,
This is not even a kung fu academy. This is like a life academy. It seems
yeah.
like you're teaching them a lot more than a kung
It's been
fu.
a lot of trial and error, but it's working really, really well for us. Like if I've got a kid for 3 years and they're going to get their black belt, yeah, they're going to be really good at punching, kicking, and all that stuff. But I mean, if they can't have the discipline of making their bed first thing in the morning, they're not going to go far, right? Who was that? You've seen that speech about making your bed in the morning, right? Who was that? Yeah,
Yes. Yeah,
exactly
yeah,
the
yeah.
same
I don't
thing,
know.
right?
I forget the
But
name.
you've seen it. But it's that
Yeah.
idea. If you're not going to make your bed first thing in the morning, you're going to have a hard time. But if you have the discipline to do that, that's going to carry over into everything you do. So if I'm going to give a kid his next belt and he's got stripes on it, it's because he made his bed, because he cleaned up after himself, he helped his mom or dad without being asked. He's got all those points of discipline in there, and that's going to be visual in a way they can see it, right? Because I mean, everyone, kid or adult, when you have those little successes, you've got to reinforce those. And some people think like, well, I don't want to do that, it's dorky, like that stuff I should be doing anyway. But it's not about that, it's about the psychology, right? Your psychology is going to be either framed for failure or framed for success. And if you want to frame it for success, you've got to be constantly reinforcing those behaviors that you want, because our habits and behaviors, when they're entrenched in our mind, they're so powerful. Why not program them to serve you, right? And a lot of us, we don't do that. We kind of just react to everything and go with the flow instead of consciously designing how our brain is going to respond to doing the right things that we need to do.
Yeah. It's a funny thing how the brain works. So it's like it's weird. If you can just overcome certain things, you'll procrastinate less, you'll be less lazy. It's just like overcoming them. It's like, to your point, like reprogramming the brain. Sometimes when you feel like you don't want to exercise one day and you're like, okay, let me just do it for 2 minutes. And after those 2 minutes, you're like, all right, I'm ready to go. Let's do some more. But it's just like initially overcoming those initial barriers in the brain that are like, no, don't do this. Let's just hang out. Let's just sit on the
It's
couch.
a good point. There's techniques involved in that overcome that. So this is, again, like, so with the book, with my book, I talk about this because the positioning that you use in kung fu and self defense are the same things you can apply in overcoming those obstacles, right? So
Let's hear
so
them.
positioning is one. Okay, so for example, when you're dealing with an opponent, position is more important than power. You can have a more powerful opponent, but if you're in the right spot, if you have good footwork and you slip to the side and you're in their blind spot, they're not going to see that strike coming. So if you learn to use better positioning, all of your strikes are going to do twice as much as they otherwise would if you're in the right spot at the right time, right? So I talk about this the same thing in habits. You've got to position everything in your environment to support you and increase the odds that you're going to do what you need to do. So one example is, I was talking to one student one time, and he wanted to start working out in the morning. He had a gym in his I think it was in his basement. He had his gym, right? And he set up with he had his weight bench and all that stuff, but he just couldn't get there in the morning. And I said, well, we've got to work on your positioning a little bit to increase your odds of success. He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, what's the first thing you do in the morning without thinking about it? He goes, well, I walk over to the coffee machine and I turn it on and I drink my coffee, and then I wake up a little bit, and then I got to decide whether I'm going to go work out or whether I'm going to go, do whatever else is nagging at me. He said, well, there's your problem right there. Change that position. I said, take your coffee machine, preload it, put it downstairs on the other end of your workbench, so you have to trip over your workbench to turn the coffee on. Boom, done. Like, change the position. And after that, you're already down there. You may as well work out and then put the coffee on. But you just took that obstacle out of your way. So, you can strategically position things so you're going to do them more regularly. And then once he did that, after a couple weeks, it was habit. It was just a normal thing that you did, right? So positioning is important in self-defense, also important in how we conduct ourselves. Make things easier for yourself, remove barriers before before they even come up.
Your book seems like it would be really helpful for especially people who are doing like New Year's resolutions, and what is it, like 70% of the people don't stick with them past January.
That's a big part of the,
And
yeah, a huge part of the book is that, because kung fu is just consistency, right? Like I was saying, you got to condition a little bit at a time. So one thing I tell my students, especially at New Year's, but pretty much any time they start, I say, you're really excited about this, right? Starting kung fu is just like any other New Year's resolution. You get your new uniform and you're all set and you're ready to go, and you're like, this is awesome. I'm going to go home after my first lesson. I'm going to move the coffee table, put my uniform on. I'm going to practice for a whole hour every day, right? People always say that to me. I said, no, 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 stop. Don't stop that right now. Don't do that. Don't say that. You're lying to yourself. No, I'm serious. Okay, here's what I want you to do. Okay, I want you to go home and practice for 1 minute only every day. Only 1 minute. You cannot go over 1 minute, but it has to be every single day without exception. Because can you come up with an excuse why you can't practice 1 minute a day? Well, no, no one can. It's only 1 minute. Exactly. So do that for 2 weeks. And if you do that 2 weeks every day without fail, then increase it to 2 minutes. Another 2 weeks, then 4 minutes, then 8 minutes, and so on and so forth. But you got to limit yourself. And that enthusiasm you feel when it's new and exciting, that's going to be gone. That willpower is going to be gone in a week. Like, don't rely on that, right? Like, and then people do that and they beat themselves up like, oh, I failed again. Well, no, you didn't. You're just relying on willpower. Willpower is a limited resource. Don't rely on that. Use a system and condition your behavior. So do your 1 minute, pat yourself on the back, do that 2 weeks, and then increase it, right? But that's that equivalent to that soft conditioning over a long period of time. That's what's going to change your behavior and achieve your goals, not this getting excited about a montage, doing it for 4 days and then quitting. That's what people do, right? So
It's
use
hard.
the 1 minute.
Yeah, it's it's such a natural thing because like even now. But I read Atomic Habits lately. It seems like you might know what Atomic Habits
I
are.
have
If you
got that on
haven't
my
been,
list, and I haven't got
yeah,
it yet, but I'll write it again.
you would love it. It seems like you already know a lot of what it takes, but it's again, it's what do you need to, to build effective habits that last longer. And the big quote, the big theme that I see and I've seen in other books is like you don't. I don't know. It's one of these things where it's like a phrase where sort of it's true and there's other things that are not entirely true about it, but it's like you don't always rise to the level of your goals. You what is it? You fall to the level of like your habits or something. Obviously, there's some truth in that, but obviously, you also are fighting towards your goals. But it's like even for me, I start something new. I'm like so excited about it. I'm like, let's do this. I'm over enthusiastic, and then like 2 weeks later, it's just like I don't feel like that. I don't feel that way anymore. Let's just like not. I don't think I want to do it. And then I read the book. I'm like, all right, I got this New Year's. It's not a New Year's resolution. It's just something that I'm doing with my brothers and a friend. We're doing like this exercise program, and it's easy. It's not like overly difficult. The goal is to get 200 points a day, and you can get there either by doing any exercise you want in each, like a push up is 1 point, an air squat is like zero point 0.7 points, running a mile is 200 points. Like it's not overly difficult. You're not going to turn into like a triathlon athlete, but it's just to get you moving into shape and into building the habit. And this way in 2 weeks when you're like overly zealous and feeling like you want to like tackle the world in February, you're like, nope, let's move on. At least it's like easy. So trying to build like easy things. And then once you do it every day, what I understand after I read the book, you know this way more than me, but after you start doing it every day, it becomes an identity. And once it's like built into your identity, then it's different. It's like, this is what I do. Like, this is a habit I do. It's similar what you're talking about. Like, just don't do it for 20 minutes, do it for a minute. And that's like built into who you are. It's like, this is what I do. And it becomes easier to make it as an established habit as opposed to a ephemeral habit where it lasts for 2 weeks. It's interesting that you come on here because I just finished up Atomic Habits, and you have a lot. You probably have a lot to say on this topic.
Yeah, well, when you got it into that self-image thing, into your identity is a huge part of it, right? So a lot of what I teach actually, and in my um, adult program next month as a group, and in some of our programs, we do have a reading list our students have to read. They're reading Psycho-Cybernetics, which is like a classic book that if you haven't read it, you definitely got to check out Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. But
Psycho
yeah,
cybernetics.
and it was written back in the 60s. When you read it, like I read the whole book and I'm like, this is awesome. This is going to change everything. I got to tell everyone about this book. I look back to the cover, it's like written in the 60s. I'm like, why? How come we don't know about this book? But so much stuff is based off it, right? Like like the whole thing, I've heard it claimed that we say that like 21 days or whatever to make a habit, that all came from that book. That came from Maxwell Maltz. And what he calls like mental surgery. But yeah, starting a habit it's that's the value there. That's the whole idea behind the 1 minute is we want to think, well, why got to do more in 1 minute? I got to do an hour. Well, yeah, but 5 months from now, when you drop the habit, whether you did 1 hour or 2 hours a day, it's not going to mean anything if you're not continually doing it, right? But when that 1 minute compounds, that's life changing if you're doing it over a year, 2 years, 3 years, right? It's going to be much more than the 2 hours that you did a couple times. And the hard
Yeah.
work is in that. The hard work is if you can change your habits and you can change your identity, your self-image. That's where everything starts. Everything else gets easier after that, right? But it takes a lot of energy and a lot of consistency to build up that self-image through that repeated behavior, just like you talked about.
The best analogy, I love this analogy in the book, The Atomic Habits, um, is I forget what the author's name is. What the hell is the author's name? I forget. But he talks about, like, if you were to heat an ice cube, let's say it's like or let's say the air temperature is like 20 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know if you do Celsius or Fahrenheit. I don't know why there has to be two different ones, but let's just use Fahrenheit. I don't know Celsius. Um, 32 is 32 is like the freezing point. So like if you kept increasing the temperature one by one by one by one from 20, you shouldn't be upset that the ice cube isn't melting at like 25, because it's just not melting yet. But and then once you get to 32, 33, then it'll start melting. The whole point was that, like, um, your habits don't have like immediate effects. It's not like I do this today and completely change as a person. It's more of you do it constantly and constantly, and there's a little bit of a lag. It's like if you meditate and eat healthy and exercise and get right with your mind for 1 week, you're not going to change your life. But if you do that for a long time, yeah, you will. You'll be more motivated. You'll be less afraid to go take on a challenge. You'll be having higher levels of energy because you're eating healthier, and you're probably going to be more healthy because you're exercising, and you'll probably go to bed earlier because you want to go fight for whatever goal is. It for doing that for 5 years straight versus someone who says, no, I'm eating like crap. I'm going to wake up pretty late because I'm just not in the mood to do this. I'm going to probably just, maybe drink a little alcohol 3 or 4 days a week. Picture those two people. Like, one person is going to be way ahead, but it's not going to look like that in a week. It's going to look like that in 5 years. It's going to be like, wow, that how did that person get that far? It's like that person was on like a constant speed treadmill, and I was like walking backwards. Yeah. So
The other thing it
I love that book.
is to compound not only the time but also the habits too. I wanted to mention that too. That's an important part, right? And this reinforced me when I was studying a lot of Jim Rohn, and he talks about how his father would every evening would eat a couple crackers and an apple, and that was his thing. And he was just like in great shape, but that was his thing. And Jim Rohn says, like, if you could just start by eating an apple as a snack in the evening, like just that one thing. So like if you were doing kung fu or whatever, anything in the morning for 1 minute, it's not only that you compound that time, but then you compound other habits. But in New Year's, we try to do all these things, like I'm going to eat better, and I'm going to exercise, and I'm going to save, and I'm going to, like all those things. And it's the same kind of deal. Like pick one thing consistently, do it consistently, and that way, because if you pick a whole bunch of things, every time you fail at one of them because you put on too much, what is that doing to your self-image? Oh man, I suck at this stuff, right? You don't want that message going in that you failed. You want to, yes, I succeeded at this one thing. Yeah, it was simple, but I got it. That's awesome. Let's put on something else. That's what you want to go at it, not adding too much, because every time you're going to drop a habit like that, it's going to take its toll on your self-image, what you don't want. You want to be, you're someone who succeeds at what they put their mind to, not someone whose willpower fails them all the time, right? And that's not, and we take it personally to ourselves, and it's, don't take it personally, right? It's not you, it's just your system. You, not, the general audience, you, if you're watching this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
You are fully capable of doing this. Don't take it personally when you rely on willpower. It's not you personally, it's not your fault. It's just the system. Use a better system.
Are any other academies doing this? It seems like if I were to go to like a martial arts academy, like we'd learn martial arts, but you're not giving someone a belt until they're doing things that are good at home. Like, it just doesn't seem like a martial arts studio. It seems like a martial arts plus, like, I don't even know, like you're like building a perfect human being academy.
I've had, there are others, and I've had really really good teachers and coaches that led me through this. And they're like years ahead, so they're not many, but they are out there, right? And you gotta just, if you're looking for a martial arts school, you've gotta just listen to the lingo and listen to what they're talking about. And if you find a nice school that you're walking into, and everyone, it's clean and well presentable, and they're using the right language, like we're gonna, develop confidence, discipline, and for your child or for you, and they're talking about goal setting, you're probably in a good spot. And if they're like, if they're instead bad mouthing the other guy across town, that's probably not a good fit, right? If they're talking about how they can, how many people they've choked out or how many trophies they've won, like that's all cool stuff, but that's probably not for you if what we're talking about here is congruent for you, right? So yeah, they are out there. They're few and far between.
Yeah. So what else does your book talk about outside of habits, or is it mainly about the
It's
habits?
it's a big part of it, but the be like T concept, right? So the title of the book is called Be Like T, and I had a really good mentor once tell me that, um, he gave me this metaphor. He said that when you boil an egg or boil a carrot, right? The same water that softens the carrot will harden the egg, right? The same water, but you get different results. Okay, egg gets boiled, gets hard, carrot gets softer. People are the same way. Okay, you can go through a traumatic experience, okay, or a very stressful experience, and someone else can go through that same experience and have a different result. So you see this sometimes when there's studies like with twins and stuff. They have the same parents, and one twin will be a certain way, the other one can be completely opposite. They've gone through the same kind of experience, right? One is hardened by the experience. It made him a tough person. And the other person, it just broke them. They just can't handle it. They don't know what to do, right? So that's kind of the metaphor there, right? So do we have to choose between like the circumstances that we're going through? Do we have to choose between if that's going to harden us and make us distrust, or is that going to just make us too soft and not be able to handle adversity? The other choice is, of course, be like tea, right? Where tea isn't like the carrot or the egg. Tea instead influences the properties of the water. So in when holistic kung fu is done properly, you're not hardened by it, you're not softened by it, but you learn how to change and conduct your life and cultivate your life the way you want through using the right philosophy. And that's what the book is about, right? How to consciously design your life, you know, not be hardened or softened by it, but using the holistic kung fu concepts of focus. Flipping your script is a lot of what I talk about, right? How to change your self-image by just through what you're talking, what you're saying, what you're repeating to yourself. Um, and strike.
Yeah, it's like reprogramming your mind, right? A little bit when you say like the flip the script. Like I've heard it say like if you feel nervous about a presentation, instead of saying in your head you feel nervous, say you feel excited. And then like that might be a different way to look at it. Maybe you don't feel like so scared.
Exactly.
Similar things
Yeah,
like that.
exactly. You mentioned Karate Kid, right? Did you see Cobra Kai? You've seen
Yes,
Cobra Kai?
I did.
So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's the perfect example. Now it's very dramatic. It's like it's a dramatic version of it, but the perfect example is when the what was his name before he was Hawk? Elite. He had kind of a poor guy had kind of a dorkier name, right? Hawk. And he runs out, right? And then he comes back in later and he flips the
Oh,
script and he's got a
yes.
mohawk and all that stuff. No, that's like, and he ends up becoming a little bit of a villain. But the point is though that he decided to flip that script. So I do quote that in the book because I thought it was just such a hilarious example of flipping your script. But we decide that, right? We constantly reinforce these stories to ourselves, and we can flip them, and then we change the way we respond to things outside of us. Another big part of it is keeping score as well. So one thing I like about holistic kung fu is that you're not competing with anyone. You're competing with yourself. And a lot of times people think like, well, that's not good. Like you need competitive sports because it teaches you how to. And they think what I'm saying is like, you know, everyone should get a trophy and don't compete and all that stuff. And I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you have a lot more competition going on from within. And in order to compete with yourself, you can't look over and see what someone else is doing. You can only look in the mirror. So by keeping score, you've got to track what you're doing and you've got to make modifications if you want to get more progress, right? So, keeping score would be like, okay, I did so many push-ups today. Track that. So I got to make sure I do one more tomorrow and one more the day after. If I'm not keeping score, if I don't have objective feedback on how I'm doing, I'm just going to be, hoping and going based on how I feel that day. And that could be great in a positive way, but it's not good in a negative way because a lot of times we're hard on ourselves and thinking, oh, I failed at this stuff. Well, did you, or do you just feel like that right now? If you have objective feedback, if you've been tracking your progress, you can look back and say, no, no, I'm actually on the right track. I've checked these boxes. I'm, on track. So we need to have objective feedback. If you don't have a coach to do that, you need to have it. You need to be doing it yourself. So, what you track, whether it's what you eat, how much you're running, whatever it is, keeping score is a handy thing to do that we as a society, I think, got away from that. And we got to bring that back as long as it's done properly, right?
Yeah. I have that with my exercise program I was telling you about.
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
tracking the
Yep.
points. Every day I'm checking my points. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the average daily points I did per month. So I better start increasing like in January versus like December so I can get my averages. We'll see how I do.
Well,
Maybe.
I mean, if you, but as long as you track it, right, you'll have that objective
Yeah.
feedback, and we get shy. So I tell people, because that sounds scary, objective feedback. Ugh, I don't want to hold myself accountable, right? It's kind of scare people, but there's a bright side to it too, because even if you don't want to track and you're subjective, there's going to be a time when you're hard on yourself, and having those objective numbers about how you did will bring you out of that slump, right? So it's important.
Yeah.
It's not a negative thing. It can be, but it can also be a very positive thing and help you out when you need to. I got a great example of that. I was cleaning up some stuff, and I had it over here. I found a sheet from like 10 years ago. The other day, and it had like my goals on it, like, and it like written in the future, like, I'm so happy that I finally achieved, and I think it was like 60 students or something at the time. Like at my time when I was building my school, I thought, oh, if I could just get 60 students, that would be so great. Like, well, we blew past that a long time ago, but at the time, that was the one insurmountable goal if I could just do that. Well, now we've got, over 150. It wasn't, not that 60 is not a big deal, but looking back on that, I was like, look at how far I've come, right? Because I had that written down as a goal, and I can objectively look at whether how far I've come from that. That helps a lot. So,
Have you ever read Think and Grow
oh yeah,
Rich?
I got a really good story for you. Okay, if you
Tell me.
haven't, I do like that book, and Bruce Lee read that book too.
No, I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
if you
I
look at
didn't
some
know
of
that.
his notes, he's actually got on one of his pages. I don't know if it made it into. I've seen it, and I think a coach shared it with me. Um, but I've seen it where he's actually got like his mission mapped out the way Napoleon Hill described it, and it's in his handwriting, right? So he read it. But actually, there's two hidden chapters to Think and Grow Rich that never got published, and they got published by an author named, I can't remember it now. Shoot. Anyway, she did publish it in a book. So if you're interested, you should check that out. That the hidden two chapters on Think and Grow Rich, she published it like 3 or 4 years ago, but she stumbled upon them through someone who worked for the original publisher, and they took them out because they were too wonky for the time. But they go really well with Kung Fu because they're all about energy and how you carry yourself and your mindset and stuff like that. So
Is it called The Lost
that's it.
Secret
That's the one. Yeah.
by Maine
Monica, yeah,
Monica?
Monica Maine. Monica Maine. Yeah,
Monica
it's
Maine.
it's a really good book. I mean, it's a quick read. If you've read Think and Grow Rich, she kind of summarizes the existing chapters kind of in her own words, but then she goes on to this chapter 16 and 17, and I've read the last chapters a few times. One of my I'm in a part of a group, and one of our coaches is Lee Miltier. She interviewed Monica Maine one time, and like, I got to check this out. I can't believe it, but when you read the chapters, they it makes a lot of sense.
What is it about? Like, why wouldn't it get into thinking the times? Right? Is it about goal setting?
No, it's about like frequency and vibration. It's metaphysical stuff. It's really cool, and that's why, like, from a kung fu
Interesting.
angle, from because we do a lot of qigong and tai chi, and we're dealing with internal energy. So for me, it was right up my alley. For some people, it might be a little more, because it's talking about frequency, it might be a little bit much. But if you like Think and Grow Rich, though, you definitely have to check that out because sequentially it fits with the rest of the book really, really well, right? It's
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
shielding, like, when you're trying to achieve something, there are other people, like, we call them energy vampires, that just, they're like a crab in a bucket, like they're trying to pull you down, because if you succeed, then they got to look at themselves and think like, well, if they did it, what does that mean? It means I got to do it too. And it's more comfortable for that person to just pull you down instead, rather than seeing you succeed, because then it makes them look at themselves and be a little more accountable to themselves, which people generally, a lot of people don't like. So it's about kind of, you know, keeping the relationships that are going to support you and shying away from the ones that are going to be holding you back, politely, right? Not like
Yeah.
shunning people away from you, politely saying like, I got to focus on something more important right now. I don't have time to talk about this stuff that's not important, right? Or very negative. So it's a lot about that.
What are your like favorite self development books?
Psycho-cybernetics is definitely my top. That one. Big Leap with Gay,
Big
Big
Leap.
Leap with Gay
Huh. I never
Hendricks
seen that
is a
one.
good one. And I actually had the a really cool privilege of sitting in on a small group workshop with him last year. There was, I think, like 7 or 8 of us. He's a really cool guy, very smart individual. But Big Leap, for anyone, everyone should read Big Leap, because it's just totally leveling up your time management. And it's not about time management per se, but it's about unleashing he calls it your inner genius, right? You've got an inner genius, something that you can do that no one else can do. And it's about unlocking that and working from that space rather than just, being busy and being scattered all the time. Um, yeah.
It's not even that though. It's just like so weird. It's if you when I read Think and Grow Rich, I was like, what was I doing? Like to put in your head a thing that you want to accomplish, a target, and to be so focused on it, and you will put actions that will get this done was like so. For me, it was weird because I wasn't doing that. So it's not you're like you are scattered, but it wasn't even like it's not even purposely scattered. You're just like randomly scattered. You're not focusing on anything if you're not like trying to accomplish anything. And so it was so strange. Like to your point, you're just scattered, and you're not even purposely scattered. It's not like, oh, I want to do this and this. You're just like, you're just like in a boat. Like the best quote I love is like, you're just a boat with no rudder in the sea. You're just everywhere. You have no target. You can't go anywhere. That was the thing that opened my mind up the most when I read Think and Grow Rich. I'm sure it's a big thing in like Big Leap too.
Well, and even this goes back again to holistic kung fu, right? Remember you ever see Last Samurai with Tom Cruise?
Possibly, but I
It
can't
was a while
remember.
ago. So the one time he's having this sword fight with the guy, it was like a kind of a friendly fight. They had wooden, boken, so they weren't killing each other, but they were like sparring kind of thing. And the guy pulls him aside and he goes, "No mind, no mind. You have too many mind." And the same, like when you're either you're competing, you're in a fight, or you're breaking a board, you can be distracted by everything that's going on. People are watching, and you can be focused on what they're thinking, what they're saying, what are they looking at, all these other things, and you're all over the place and you're reacting. Or you can have your singular focus on what it is you need to achieve at that moment. And once you get that singular focus, all this other stuff gets blocked out. This is the difference between proactive and reactive, right? So also in the book, we talk a lot about strike first. Okay. The strike first principle in Mantis, people confuse at first, because strike first gets lost in translation. It means you hit the guy before he hits you, right? It doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you attack first necessarily. Like if someone's calling you a name you don't like, you don't attack them, right? But if you know that person's going to attack you, they've made it clear, they made their intention clear, they're raising a fist, they're about to move in, you don't wait and try to block and block and block, right? Like you can't survive that way. You're going to get hit. Person's going to demolish you. You need to strike first when it's justifiable to do so, because it puts the other person immediately on the defense. Once you have them on the defense, they're going to be reacting to you rather than you reacting to them. And you always want to be on the proactive side, forcing them to respond to you rather than the other way around. Okay. And that strike first philosophy should be in everything we do. Right. So when we get up in the morning, most people are reactive. They get up in the morning, they put it on the phone. Okay, what's it going to tell me to think today? Right. And then they put on the TV or read the newspaper, and then they get set in a mood. And then
I've actually seen Alexa on the screen says, "Ask Alexa what you should eat today."
mm,
It's like I don't need to ask
no.
Alexa what the hell I'm gonna eat. Okay, like stop trying to make me like mindless over here.
Exactly. So that's very reactive. Whereas the proactive person will get up and say, what am I going to accomplish today? Well, I either want to exercise, I want to meditate, I want to go for a walk, I want to put myself in the right mindset. And then I'm going to be able to, things are going to be reacting to me. People can be like, oh, you're in a good mood today. They're responding to me because I'm striking first. Not striking people. I mean, I'm putting out the energy
Yeah,
that I want and putting out my expectations of what I want, and other people are responding to me rather than what's life got for me today? How is life going to kick me today? Like that's reactive thinking. So being proactive, strike first, that's a very important part. And that kind of ties into what we were talking about.
Do you think, I don't know if I think there is, but do you think there's an issue with like uh people being too shallow? When I say shallow, like they don't think or read concepts and ideas deep enough. Like when you just said strike first, in my head it's like that can be easily misconstrued unless you talk in a few paragraphs. That can be easily misconstrued as, like you said, just punch people if you don't like them. Like, and I just feel like there's an issue uh with like things like TikTok and like news headlines where we're getting surface level information, where people need to be, you need to just sit down and like read and go more in depth than a 6 second video, go more in depth than a headline, and initially think, okay, like if you wrote an article and it said strike first, I feel like 50% of the people may get it, 50% of the people might be like, Rob, this guy is an a-hole. Like, what is he talking about? I feel like people, I don't know if that's something that you also like talk about with your academy, but being able to like sit down, think, and read in depth. Like now, I don't know how that fits with kung fu, but it's just something that I generally see missing. Even me, when I was younger, was missing. Just like, and then I, then became a huge fan of reading, and it changed. I think it changed my life. But like, I just feel like that's a missing thing in a lot of people, especially young
It's
people.
it's getting it's getting and it's going to get worse. A quick note before I comment on that. Have you heard of the book Deep Work? check
No.
check out that, because it's exactly what we're talking about. But when I Deep Work is a book that yeah, you definitely anyone should read if this has resonated with them. But when I was doing a lot of, and in high school, I'm actually aside from being kung fu, I was a drama kid. I was in all theater and stuff like that, right? And learning public speaking has helped a lot with teaching kung fu. And one thing that I was taught to me quite a few times was that when you're doing a speech, keep it to like 7 minute blocks, right? So every 7 minutes you need to put in a joke, something to light the air or change topics, because the audience is kind of used to 7 minutes. And then it was either all taught to me or I realized my own, I don't remember which, but the reason why that 7 minute mark is there is because, and this is going back 20 years ago, but 20 years ago, everyone's brain was conditioned for 7 minutes of attention, because that's the time in between commercials when you're watching regular broadcast TV. Good speakers and marketers knew that, so that's why they kept things to 7 minutes. After that, people are not used to keeping their attention, right? So this is the scary thing you got to think about. If that was the truth back then and everyone's brains were programmed for 7 minutes, what are they programming themselves for now when you're limited to 144 characters a tweet and a 30-second TikTok? So if parents are watching, you've got to be very, very careful here and think about this, about what you're doing to your kids by kind of just letting them go, right? Because this does have a consequence. These short periods of time, it's not only that, yeah, we got to read, it's like essential, because otherwise we're programmed for 30-second spots and then we're distracted, right?
Yeah, how could you ever be an expert at anything if you don't deeply understand it? How could you like ever have a conversation, understand what that person's trying to say in depth, if you're just not willing to put more than 30 seconds of really understanding what that person's trying to
It's
say?
impossible.
Yeah.
On the plus
Uh
side of that, for anyone listening, don't think of that as a negative, because it's always a double-edged sword, right? That means that if you are going to be an expert in your whatever it is you want to do, there is huge opportunity and less competition to do a deep dive into something, because the majority of people are stuck on 30 seconds bits and 144 characters. So there's huge opportunity for you if you can focus and become an expert in your field, which is, again, it's not crazy difficult to do. Read a book a month, and that's it. You're going to be an expert in not that long of a time.
what got you into reading? Did you always like it? As a kid, did you like
Oh
it?
no, I hate I hated reading as a
Is there a book that opened it up for you that you like, "Oh, I actually like this stuff?" Like being forced to read the stuff in school was like, for me, it was painful. Like I don't want to hear about, honestly, I get that it was a great thing, but I just don't care about Shakespeare. Like it's just not interesting to me. But then like when I read these types of books, it just like opens up a light that I'll go, I really like this stuff. I like learning to improve my life. Was there, like, how did you get into it if you didn't like it when you were younger?
Necessity, I guess. I wanted to build up a business and a lifestyle, and I didn't like you couldn't go to school for how to become a kung fu master and build a successful business. Like it you don't you, there's no degree in that. Like, yeah, you get the martial art training, but so I had to seek out other coaches. And when you're having a qualified coach, you listen, right? And when they don't have time to explain something to you, they say read this book. And then if you're a good student, you go and read it, no questions asked. Then you come back and you're like, wow, holy cow, where was this book all my life? Well, there you go. So having a having good teachers, I guess, having good mentors, that was made all the difference. And then it just had to experience for myself, because again, same thing. Like academically, I didn't like reading because again, I didn't find it practical for that point. But now reading this stuff is like, here's what to do, go and do it, and now I get to apply it right away. So I guess being more hands-on in martial arts, needing to apply something helped a lot.
Isn't that crazy? You like, I don't know what other time period in this civilized world we're so grateful to have this, but like you can in about, depending how fast you read, depending how big the book is, let's just say on average 6 hours or something. You can literally download or upload information that took someone potentially a year to 2 years of experience, way more probably, because people write this at, people usually write books like you, like after a long period of doing something. So it takes 1 to 2 years to organize and make everything perfect into a book that probably took 20 30 years of experience, of honing, of thinking about, of refining. And now you can just take that and read it, and maybe it takes 6 hours. When did you ever have that in this world? Like, you can't ever get that, like, if you didn't have a book. Even if you knew the person, they can't in that amount of time give you the perfect, like, way that their ideas are structured in a conversation. Conversations aren't that long, so how are you going to, like, so you can't even do that if you know the person, and most likely you're never going to know these people because either they're, you know in a different circle than you, they're probably famous, you're never going to get to meet them, or they're dead. And so it's just a lost opportunity. I talk about this way too much, probably everyone's sick of it, but it's a lost opportunity to not take advantage of, like, reading. It's crazy
No,
to
it
me.
needs to be said again and again and again, because as much opportunity is there now, there's more smoke screen, there's more distraction, right? There's more, people you telling you can't, it can't be done, things are a certain way or whatever. It just goes hand in hand. The more opportunity, the more perceived obstacles there are as well, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't say it too
All
much.
right. Well, we'll end off here because we're coming close on the hour, and I want to end off again just telling us what your the name of your book is and where we can
You
get it.
can, yeah, you can check out. Just get on Amazon. Be Like Tea, by me, Sifu Rob Atalick. Easy to find, and also if you find me on Facebook at the Red Sash Renegade, and find my website, I also have an audio video version of it where I'm just reading it. You can download it, and it's only I think $9 or something like that. So if you Facebook search Red Sash Renegade, you'll find me there.
Awesome. If you send me that link too, I'll put it in the
Oh,
post.
fantastic! That's awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for coming on here. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I think you have a big you have a big thing happening in Niagara Falls soon, right? For the
Yeah, well, it'll be a little bit long term. It'll be a couple years, but we're building an actual retreat center.
Oh.
Yeah. We've got
Got
50
it,
acres
got
of
it, got it.
conservation land. We're building a new school on it. It's going to be kind of like a temple retreat. It's pretty awesome. So
That's gonna be freaking awesome. I feel like I need to.
I
visit
will
that.
definitely. Oh yeah, I definitely gonna have, and it's gonna have like rooms in it too, so you can come and stay. So if you want to take a trip to Niagara Falls in a couple of years, I'll have a spot there for you.
I love
All
it.
right, thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you
Great
so
show.
much.
Thanks.
Yep. Have a good
Yeah,
New
you too.
Year.
Thank you.